and green, though, John. Oh, Anyway, we'll kick off proceedings. You're all very welcome here tonight and at this cold winter's night to this fabulous launch of Neil Brosnan's new collection of short stories, The Loft Window and Other Stories. We're delighted that Neil chose our venue to launch his book, and he asked me just to open proceedings tonight and to introduce the man behind the publishing of the book, Dominic Taylor, the director of the Limerick Writers Centre. And Dominic has been involved in organising literary and music events since 2002, beginning with the White House Poetry Revival series, working alongside Barney Sheehan. And since 2008 he's been director of the Limerick Writers Centre and founded several notable initiatives including On the Nail, Literary Gathering, the Poetry Circle and the Acoustic Club. He's also launched various literary competitions and festivals, and he's a published author in his own right with his collection of poetry of clay and soil. And Neil's book was published by Savoy Editions, an imprint of the Limerick Writers Centre. So I'd like to welcome Dominic, and I'll hand you over to him now. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Cara, and welcome everybody. On behalf of the Limerick Writers Centre and our imprint, our new imprint, Savoy Editions, the publishers of Neil's book of short stories, The Loft Window, thank you all for coming out here tonight to launch this very special book. Tonight we gather not merely to celebrate the talent of Neil Brosnan, but also to celebrate our new imprint, Savoy Editions, an imprint to cater for genre and literary fiction, to complement our other two imprints, Revival Press for poetry and Limerick Writers Centre Publishing for non-fiction. So tonight is a moment of great pride for us and our literary community. For years we've worked to make writing and publishing accessible to everyone, regardless of background, experience or circumstance, and Savoy Editions arrives as the next chapter in that work. We're not chasing bestseller lists or mass production. Savoy Editions will produce limited, carefully manufactured print runs, books made with intention, care and respect for both writer and reader. Our approach is straightforward: quality over quantity, craft over haste. We believe that every book deserves to be well made and every author deserves to be heard. But here's what truly excites us. We want every Savoy Edition book to inspire other writers. We believe that even in limited editions, each book has the power to encourage someone to pursue their own writing dream. Many of you here might have heard of the avant-garde rock band, the Velvet Underground. Well, back in the 1960s, their first album sold only 300 copies. But there's a wonderful legend that says every person who bought that album went on to form a band. That's our dream for Savoy Editions. We may publish limited runs, but if each book inspires even one person to pick up a pen, to join a writing group, to believe that their story matters, then we've created something far more valuable than a bestseller. We've created a movement, writer by writer. And incidentally, the name The Velvet Underground was taken by the band from a paperback book. So it is of enormous pleasure for us to be here tonight to launch The Loft Window and Other Stories by Neil Brosnan. Neil's writing journey has taken him from being an award winner and Pushcart nominee to the pages of journals and magazines around the world. His path has been one of dedication, community and persistence, and now he holds the results in his hands. Shay Tompkins, editor of Ireland's Own, said of Neil, "Neil's flowing prose opens a window to the heart of Ireland's past. with the complex nature of human relationships a central theme. Let me say, as a community-based publisher, we're very proud to see Neil's book make its debut into the world here tonight. And I'm also proud to say that this book is the 214th title the Limerick Writers Centre has published across its 3 imprints since 2008. Now that's a lot of books, and I think we've learned a few things along the way. And one of those things is respect for the writer. While we're always willing to offer advice, we like to observe the writer's wishes when it comes to how their work is presented. We're not here to make ourselves look good. We're here to get good writing into readers' hands. So let's celebrate Neil tonight. And let's celebrate Savoy Editions. And let's celebrate the power of community, of craft, and of taking that often terrifying, bold step to share your story with the world. We all know that publishing is changing. Many publishers say they want great stories, but seem to actually want people with TikTok followers, Instagram audiences, or podcasts. And with AI's arrival, there's a danger that writing is being reduced to content production. But with writers like Neil and publishers like ourselves at Savoy Editions, we hope to resist that tide and continue publishing books that matter, books that challenge, move, and stay with readers long after the final page. Books written by people who have something to say and not just something to sell. Go on. So we're going to have a few readers who will read some of Neil's work. And the first person up I'd like to invite is Jean Kelly, who's Neil's partner.
Hello everybody, and thank you for coming this evening. I'm going to read an excerpt from a story called Atlantis, and the story itself is set in about 1996 at the time of the Olympics in Atlanta. Look! Poppy squeals, her left arm hugging me closer as her right finger points out to the sea. Can't you see it? It's out there, look! I look, and I keep looking, but all I can see is a solitary gull wheel high above the wrinkles of the turquoise that shimmer into a distant azure sky. We are perched high on a rocky outcrop overlooking Sickle Cove, the little arc of sand we regard as our private beach. The only land access to Sickle Cove through the split, a narrow ravine which separates our Grand's properties and bisects the cliff behind them. It's okay, says the strange nymph-like creature of whom I've always been aware, but have only recently befriended. Relaxing her grip on my shoulders, she uses her other hand to pinch a breeze-blown ringlet from the corner of her mouth, while muttering that most people can't see it, but she can, because her da lives there. I make no comment. Only yesterday she showed me the cave where the fairies sleep. She is 15. I'm 13. She has lived all her life in Glenascole. I've come with Mum to spend our summer in the house where my Gran was born and reared. Although our holiday has just begun, the year that changes everything is already halfway through. It has rained for the first time in several weeks, leaving the morning sky a strange, unfinished canvas with flashes of blue and white peeping through the several shades of grey. Poppy is eerily silent as we get dressed after our swim. I tear my eyes from the choughs and fulmars that ride the thermals above us and steal a sidelong glance as Poppy's fingers trace a pallid, lopsided V of a scar tissue in the centre of her forehead. "It's back," she hisses, rising almost in slow motion. She squirts through coils of saturated hair. "Can you see it?" I feel her fingers dig into my forearm. "I can see something, I think," I hear myself say, but while the opaque mass on the horizon does look like an island, I know from my atlas that there is nothing but salt water between us and Newfoundland. "Betcha I can swim that far." Even Michelle Smith couldn't swim that far, I force a laugh. But I'm worried now. I've never seen Poppy so intense, so intent. Me man nearly did, and she'd have made it only for the lifeguards catching her in their boat. That's why they locked her away. But she was only trying to tell me da about me. You know, me da. You seen him on the telly. He's called Mark Harris in The Man from Atlantis. But his real name is Patrick Duffy. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Now to get another flavour of what Neil's writing is like in the Loft Window and Other Stories, I'd like to invite Linda Galvin.
Hi everyone, this is called Driftwood. Angela isn't exactly sure when her loathing of public holidays began. With each impending break from work became a source of anguish rather than joy. She had once adored such breaks and had perfected the art of manipulating isolated bank holidays into an extra week of annual leave, providing a more senior colleague hadn't already beaten her to the punch. She had never understood her co-workers' obsession with sun holidays and foreign travel. To Angela, time off had mattered more than the time of year. Time off had meant time at home with her parents, her brothers and sisters, her old school pals in the place she still loves and had never wanted to leave. Both her parents are long gone, and it's almost 11 years since her brother lost his brave battle with cancer. Her estranged sister-in-law now rules the roost in the old family home, the house into which, as the eldest, Angela had felt duty-bound to plough every spare penny of her first decade's earnings. Angela has seen her three sisters marry and bear children. The youngest, Martha, is granny to a pair of toddlers. It's been over 10 years since Angela last spent a night in any of her siblings' homes. Her only remaining family contact is with twice divorced Martha, who frequently escapes the chaos of real life to join her for a weekend in Dublin.
And I'm here tonight, I suppose, by virtue of the fact that I've been honoured by Neil in my capacity as chairman of Listowel Writers Week. And can she ask, an donor, an shonocht, an loch, sho a hiola, Dumayan Cara, Neil. It was a great honour indeed to be asked by Neil to launch the book. And Neil is my junior by some 2 years or so. We both grew up here in Listowel. in the 50s and in the 60s. People tend to talk about the 50s now as a desperately dismal era in our history, and naturally there were some tough times, in particular I suppose the curse of immigration, where so many of our young men and women from Listowel and all around here and all over Ireland went to the major cities of the UK to earn a living for themselves. And coming up to around this time of the year, Christmas, one of my abiding memories in the mid-50s is the big crop of young men that would come back from London or Birmingham after spending their first 3 months over there. They went over after the races. They came back then with their shiny new teddy boy suits and their winkle picker shoes, and they took up their position there at Welch's Corner, which is now McKenna's Corner, and they would be talking about what was like over, and they had these fantastic Cockney accents after about three months in England. But it was wonderful. But it wasn't all doom and gloom, you know. And even though we didn't have a whole lot, we got on with life. And I was a townie, because I was born and reared in the middle of Market Street. Neil, as I reminded him the other day, was a country boy, even though he was living closer to the parish church than I was. But once you tailed off at the bottom of the bridge road there, you were a country boy, and they were a different species to us, you know. We thought we had it all made with our pitch and toss and our carry on around the streets and the alleyways of the town. But we did concede that there was something really good going on out in those areas as well. We weren't quite sure what it was. Chickens had a lot to do with it, and maybe women. There was rumours they had women there, but we didn't really believe that. But education, of course, was the big thing in those days, and nearly every set of parents that ever was saw education as the way up and the way out for their children to do better than they did. And I asked Neil recently who did influence him and who did encourage him in his early days, and he said to me that Brian McMahon, the master, liked his school compositions. And it's such a simple thing to say, but how wonderful that was for Neil, and indeed how wonderful for all of us that had the opportunity to be educated by people like Brian McMahon and all those other good teachers that we came under at the time. We weren't too fond of them at the time, but they did leave their print upon us, and obviously that encouraged Neil to go on and to go forward. And then we went to St. Michael's, of course, where again, even though it was a very Spartan regime, we did benefit greatly from the level and the quality of teaching there. Now, I've been following Neil's writings for quite some time, and I follow all the local writers, and there's so many here at the moment. I can't mention one because I'd leave out 6, but it is greatly uplifting, actually, as chairman of Writers Week, for me to see so many published poets and writers here tonight. And I just get a great sense of pride, because the Listowel Writers Week, like the Centre here and St. John's, all played their part in bringing that forward and building on the incredible heritage that we were left by John B. and Brian McMahon and their colleagues way back in the 70s. And I think as long as we're alive, someone will have to keep that going, because it's a precious gift that cannot be left aside. And thankfully, we're actually working hard on Writers Week more than ever now to involve new local indigenous writing. We're going back to our roots as much as we can to encourage and to give proper prize money, serious prize money, you know, not to just the big names anymore, but to encourage the local writing, which is what it's all supposed to be about. Excuse me. The first glimpses I got at Neil's work would have been probably in local editions like Ballydunnu magazine or Ireland's Own and things like that, and they were always intrigued me, because I often wondered like how he went that direction and I didn't go that direction, and we came from the same background. But I think just when he won the Brian McMahon Short Story Award in 1994, was it? 2004, sorry. That's really, I think, what put you on the map well, as most people would have been concerned. We knew then you had arrived, and in the meantime you've gone on to become a multi-award winning writer, and your work can be found in anthologies all over the world. I'm small, shot of breath, and recovered from a bit of a flu, so I'm shot the wind. But I think The Loft Window is Neil's third short story compilation, and in my opinion it's his best. His music is very important to Neil, and that's no surprise to any of us here from Listowel that grew up in the 50s, because music in Listowel in the 50s was Neil's father Timmy Brosnan, and his colleagues from a little coterie out there in Woodford and Ballygrinnan, who had great music and were prepared to get up in the back of a lorry or get up in the back of a van and play for us at Fresh Kyols and all those things. That was the music we know. We know very little about the Beatles or anything like that, but we did know about those. And the music is in Neil's work, and of course he plays and he sings and he writes. And I think the music infuses his writing as well. I can hear it loud and clear, and I'm sure others can as well. I won't go on too long, but our great friend Billy Keane, Arthur Billy, who wrote the introduction to the book, a very good introduction actually, well worth reading itself, and in his own inimitable style he encourages the readers to dip into the book. Just read one and put it away, and maybe don't go consecutively to the next one. Read number 6 or whatever and go back to it. Unfortunately, I didn't take his advice because I have an addictive personality, and I started reading the first one and I couldn't stop until I finished them all. Like the boy with the sweet hands inside the jar of sweets, I had to keep going. But you know, the short story. I'm awfully philosophical about it. I did teach English literature in my lifetime once, but the short story is a very unusual discipline. I'm not going to tell anyone how to suck eggs or how writers should write, but it seems to me it's a particularly difficult discipline. And how do you define it? I suppose the one single word that you would pick out, for me anyway, would be conciseness. To keep it short and sweet. And you all know the old story about the schoolmaster who decided to give his students, his pupils, a contest. They were to go home and they were to write an essay or a composition on the family pet. And some wonderful flowery pieces came back the following day, 10 and 20 pages long, and this particular character, Mickey, came back and his essay went, "Our family pet. We had a cat once, but we threw him out." and that was the end of the story. And to a certain extent, that's what the short story is about. You've got to get to the point pretty quickly. Neil doesn't waste words. If you read the opening 2 paragraphs actually of the title story, which is The Loft Window, I've said it's better than the others, just take that one alone. The opening 2 paragraphs deal with a very complicated family relationship and the construction or the description of a cottage. You won't get a neater and nicer and more to the point explanation anywhere. And that's something obviously you have in you. And I always think it's very surprising that we Irish are so good at the short story, because I don't think it's in our character to be short about anything. You know, Irish people tend to be very verbose. And our writing, you know, our ancient Fri poetry was full of all sorts of superfluous adjectives and adverbs and subordinate clauses on top of subordinate clauses. So I don't know where we actually get the brevity that's required to write a good short story. But obviously we have it. The Russians had it, the French, the Maupassant and those had it. And Neil has it. And he doesn't spare words. And I agree with Billy Keane, who said he likes short stories. And I have to say that that's a weakness of mine. Sometimes the short stories go on, and you wonder at one stage, is this man heading towards a novel, or where is it going to finish? And it can be heavy work. I know it's very difficult for the writer, but it can be also difficult for the reader. So I love when Neil's stories stop like that. And in that second, in that split second where you comprehend something, that's where the magic is, really. That's where he's finished his work, he's written, but we're still working the head. You forget me. And I like that. And that's why I want to go on to the next one straight away. Okay. Final thing about Neil. Nature is all over his work. We had it in the last reading in particular. And Neil is a great naturist. And any of us who are fortunate enough to be members of his Facebook club, we get the occasional voyeur look into his nocturnal animals that he has on the little video coming and going into the bird box, and there's every kind of a fella there. You could watch it forever, and you know, it is lovely. So some of us are blessed to have that. If you're not blessed enough to have access to Neil's bird box, well, you have access to his wonderful volume of poems, of short stories The Loft Window and Other Poems, and I'm delighted to say that it's fully and truly launched. And not forgetting the very best wishes to the publishers and the good work that you are doing. And I listened very closely with interest to what you have to say. And I'm feeling we'll be back to you from Writers Week to discuss that maybe a little bit further. Okay?
Lovely.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Linda. Now for the main event himself, Neil, where is he?
I'm sure.
Thanks, Dominic. Thanks to Gina and Linda, not forgetting Mairead over on my right with her tinkling earlier on. Thank you, Mairead. Actually, it's Mairead's birthday tomorrow. It was mine yesterday, so I'm now well past the age of reason. This story actually is a bit about the age of reason. It's one of my favourite stories because it's the first of my stories that got published in the United States of America about 10 years ago. And I've had many, many more published there since. Anyway, this is called Make-A-Wish. Make a wish, they said. Close your eyes and make a wish, wish. I squeezed my eyes and wished and wished and wished. Blow, they said. Take a deep breath and blow, blow, blow. I blew and blew and blew. And not until my lungs ached did I open my eyes. I hadn't got my wish. They were all still there. It must have been that seventh candle, I decided, as it flickered mockingly until succumbing to a cyclone of exhalations from the halo of distorted grins that corralled the oak dining table. I still blamed the seventh candle, the last one lit. But it could have been the sixth, or third, or even the first. 7, they'd insist, is the age of reason, the age when we become accountable to God for our actions, are deemed capable of mortal sin, and eligible for eternal flames. I didn't consider myself ready for any such responsibilities. Was that why the candle hadn't blown out? Was it God's way of telling them I was only 6.5? But why should God suddenly care about me? He certainly hadn't when, according to Dad, he had called man to be with him in heaven. I don't remember much about Mam, but I still have occasional flashbacks of her lying in her coffin in the front room, the insidiousness of the pearly white rosary beads wound around her entwined yellow fingers, and the incongruity of her rouged cheeks and wine-red lips. Maybe Mam had told God that it wasn't my birthday. My friend Matt reckoned that the party was staged solely for the bishop's visit, and as the recently donated navy suit fitted me best of all, I was the one soaked, scrubbed, shorn and sprayed to within an inch of my life. I'd also been subjected to crash courses in catechism, hierarchical etiquette and table manners. I felt as if I was being prepared for ordination before I'd even learned the act of contrition by heart.
Thanks, Neil. That looks like the end of the launch. Thanks for everything. Thanks for coming.